Ladies and gents, welcome to the channel. First public video for me. I've done a few private ones that have gone on my Instagram, but first public one, so hello and welcome. So I guess a brief intro. I'm Simon. I will play as Fiasco on Stars. You can follow me on, obviously, here or Instagram at PKRElmo, where I've been posting on Instagram for about 6 months now, give or take. I'm branching out into the world of YouTube for kind of just longer content where I can go into a little bit more detail about stuff, hopefully provide a lot of free value. So that's what this page will be about, essentially. I think a good topic for the first video is going to be how to redline more, as it's very, very fashionable and everyone wants to improve their redline. So how today will work is we're going to do a bit of a play and explain in some 200 zoom, which I've just messed around with for 5 minutes here just beforehand. Wanted, as I say, to talk about redlines. So we've got a couple of misconceptions here, which I'll just run through, and then a couple of session targets where I'm looking to kind of illustrate some points and let the creative juices flow a little bit. So we got 3 common misconceptions here about redline. Number 1 is that it's about tripling off everywhere. This is a big misconception. Redlining is not just about front loading all of your aggression, kicking the front door in and just, going bet. Obviously, if you just triple everywhere, then yes, your redline will improve, but there's more to it than that. If you can find aggression in lines where others are not, and people do not expect you to find aggression, then you will often see your redline skyrocket. So, instead of just putting everything into the triple, maybe c-bet the flop, check back the turn, and then raise the river, for example. That's a line that is really, really underdone. If you can flip that and maybe overdo it, there's a lot of potential there. So it's not just about tripling off everywhere. It's about, as I say, putting value into different lines, and then in order to, get called with your value, put bluffs into different lines as well. But very profitable spots. Instead of just front loading everything. Number 2, redline comes from never folding. Obviously, if you call more, your redline goes up, but redline can also be about folding earlier. There are many, many spots in the game tree where people are just going to be way too strong, and a lot of people will make the mistake of calling the flop, as they would, if they were trying to play theory-orientated poker. If someone's too strong in a certain line, that basically just means that you're going to face the aggression on the turn a little bit too much. And if you're going to face the aggression on the turn a little bit too much, the correct adjustment is to overfold on the flop. So we'll look at this today, maybe folding a little bit earlier if we assume that our opponents are too strong in a certain line. Finally, number 3, redline cannot be learned. You're either aggressive or you're not. I think this is a big misconception. My redline's a lot better than what it used to be. It flirts between, break even and winning. I think over the last year, it's definitely winning. And it's not always been the case for me. It's something I've worked very, very hard at. And it's also, helped my results and my win rate an awful lot. So hopefully with this video, as I say, I can teach you a few little tips and tricks on how you can learn to improve your redline. So the targets for the session, what we're going to be trying to do, as mentioned up here, is we're going to put value and bluffs into different lines, and then we're going to be aggressive. And then be aggressive, there we go. We're going to focus on bluff catching, so folding earlier where we expect people to be too strong, but also where people are too weak, we're going to be stationing very, very hard. And finally, we're also going to look at sizing. So like, what size can we get away with? Oftentimes, you can go bigger than you think, and that will obviously improve your redline as well, because you're just putting a lot more pressure onto your opponents. So we'll explore this as we go. All right, let's jump in. Let's have it. So if you see green, that's going to be recreational. If you see purple, that's like a semi-recreational. If you see pink, that's a very recreational. The other colors are going to be varying degrees of regular. So I'm not going to go too deep into what each tag for each reg means, because some things are meant to be kept to yourself, and I don't want to give away too much on here. Obviously giving away quite a bit by doing this video anyway. So we have an RNG up here if we ever use it, which we probably won't too much for this sort of video. And yeah, that should cover it. So we flop trips, great start. We just start with a range bet on that particular board. Put the T down. And let's see what happens. So, I mean, the plan will be to run the video for about 45 minutes, give or take. Going to be interesting with our A7. Okay, less interesting now. Okay, limp for Mr. Cruiser, and 8-5 we can go ahead and isolate, so I'm going to go ahead and find it. It's good in both. I think it can check, it can ISO, everything's good. And as I say, for the sake of the video, we're going to be taking the aggressive lines, let's say. On the flop here, I think polarizing makes more sense because I'm isolating hands like this, so I'm going to go ahead and check this one back. It's also like a board where like Cruiser's limp calling range shouldn't really hit that too hard, so I'm not going to face that much aggression on future streets generally. I'm going to do a loose call here because the recreational's there. And yeah, we're just going to check the turn with the 5-8. We're just basically looking for showdown at this point. King 8 looks kind of fantastic as a flop bet here. Just gonna polarize, but also like when I have a flatting range on the button there, like it's quite linear, quite strong, so using something like King 8 is gonna make a lot of sense, I think. Okay, so it goes check, 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 and then we face a bet on the river. As I say, I think it's an interesting spot because I think it's easy to just overbluff here because you just arrive to the river with too much, just, you know, 7-8 and stuff. But it is a board that's very good for me. It does hit my perceived range pretty hard, so I do question whether Cruiser will actually even just ever bluff here or will just give up. Very difficult to know, very close, but we'll go ahead and call for the vid. Yeah, I think that's a mistake, to be honest. I don't think you need to go ahead and bluff 2s there. Just way too much showdown for me. All right, Buddy goes with a 4-bet here. He's definitely on the tighter side. So I'm not like fist pumps, you know, getting it in. I don't expect there to be a huge amount of 4-bet bluffs here. So we're just going to go ahead and call and try and flop an ace or a king. It's going to be an interesting flop, that one. As I say, he's 19, 15, 8. This is the hood here. Really simplistic hood for me. Okay, goes ahead and checks. Okay, I think we'll just go ahead and stab at this point. Interesting to face a check like semi-recreationals. I mean, unless I face the check jam, which would be grim. Okay. Yeah, I mean, recreationals, generally speaking, like they see monotone boards, they panic, and they want to like charge the draws, so they tend to just fast play everything. So when I get the check there, then we can just go ahead and stab infinitely. Even as I say, a hand like Ace King just has a lot of equity. I think if he did jam, we'd probably just have to shrug and put the money in, but because again, we got too much equity. But I don't expect to get raised very often, to be honest, in that sort of line. So a good, exploitative rule of thumb, like, is if you expect to go ahead and get check raised a lot, then you probably don't want to bet very often. And if you don't expect to get check raised very often, you go ahead and bet as much as you like. Kind of, understanding that idea and that kind of concept is going to definitely help your red line, because you can just go ahead and stab infinitely when people, are just going to be relatively face up. As I say, a lot of redlining is just sort of taking advantage of very, very face-up ranges at the end of the day. We'll make a loose defend for the video, and I just start out with a range bet on these boards. No need to reinvent the wheel. Even 150 deep, I still think it's sweet. Jack 8, no club, no party, I would say here. And just very easy check on the turn. Not going to do anything overly creative at this point. Interesting. Quick check from Cruiser. That was interesting. So quick check doesn't really indicate a decision. So not that that's weak. I think it's just a lot of ace-x, to be perfectly honest with you. I think if you float the flop with a hand like, 4s or 6s, you would consider bluffing. I think, honestly, it's just a lot of ace-x. Which gives me tingles, actually, because I may just check rip it in his face here. Like, based on the timing on the turn, we block, well, we have good blockers and things like that as well. I just don't expect this to be strong ever, and I just think we can go ahead and check rip it into his face, and there's not much he can do about it. Obviously, he can make a good call here with ace-jack or something, fair enough, but I think the timing on the turn there is just, you're not considering betting, and it's not strong, and I have infinite value in that line. Like, I'll play queens that way every time. I'll play aces that way quite a lot. So I think we can just get away with it. Really difficult to be able to defend that as well, especially when it's such a deep spot. 9s we call pre, and we just call on the flop. Not much else to do. Not considering raising here. It's not the best turn I've ever seen in my life. Be interesting to see what his strategy is here. Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of just intrigued. I think this is a spot where a lot of people may size by their hand a little bit, because you can block here, you can go this size here, but with the SPR being as it is, kind of just makes me feel like if you're strong, you're going to be stronger for this size, and your block's going to be a little bit more like queens and jacks and stuff. Interesting to kind of think about where his bluffs go for that reason. But I think we're just going ahead and binning it, to be honest, and feeling pretty okay about it. The thing is, with the positions here in the half pot on the flop, it is it does hit him pretty hard. My worry is that it's really easy to just lazily half pot the flop like always, and then bomb the turn because it's a king and it's good for your range. It is very close. I think we could definitely argue for call the turn there. We got a recreational up here in the big blind, so I'm actually going to flat the jacks. I mean, it's a flat anyway. Like, so many people just 3-bet them every time here, but again, just being a little bit more creative with your hands. As I say, you study the GTO, jacks is a flat. Go ahead and flat them every now and again, and play them in a multi-way pot or play them in a single raise pot like this. There's more than one ways to skin a cat. And I think stabbing makes a lot of sense on the flop here. But he goes ahead and check raises us, which is not obviously ideal, but we're not going anywhere as yet. He does have a lot of 6x in his range, but he also just obviously has a lot of draws in his range. All of them just got there annoyingly. Interesting. kind of makes me think 8-9 or something along those lines at this point. All right. We were going to go ahead and value bet the river, but we are no longer because we are going to lose to 8-9, I think. Or 9-7, yeah, sure. 9-7-2 versus a nittier opponent. Could consider c-betting here. I think c-bet's actually quite nice. Yeah, so no raise. And his range is very pocket pair heavy here, so I think we can just go ahead and apply the max amount of pressure. Still have 2 overcards. That's, you know, he has no 2x in his range. It's basically a brick. We can go ahead and fire the money in there. 9-7 that check raises the flop, eh? That's very, very interesting, to be honest. Like how mergy that is. I think, you know, next time we play... Oh, he's finished, is he? No, that makes sense. Next time we play this guy, we're probably going to carve out a 3-betting range. If he's going that merged multi-way on the flop, like... Fast playing our value and shifting our value versus him is going to be really beneficial. So maybe we get into a spot where that happens. Maybe we don't, but... We have 30 minutes to try. So opening a little bit wider here because he's so tight. Yeah, I think our hand's quite a pretty c-bet, to be honest. Even though we are generally, you know, if he's so tight, like, and he's not free betting enough, then his calling range here is going to be a little bit stronger. So we, you know, generally want to slow down. Plus we're opening wider, so we generally want to slow down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and check the turn with all of this in mind. Obviously, it's a fine bluff, but I've also, like, the dynamic of things. Like, I've fired it into him endless times before this, so I think it's interesting. I think, and then on the river, we're just going to look to try and bluff a 2 or bluff a 6. We can credibly rep an ace. So I think the size that does that is about medium is fine for me, I think. He's not folding a queen, but I think we can fold him off a lot of 6x and stuff like that. And over here with the 10s, this is just like a personal little exploit. Like Sea of Magic down here doesn't like to fold to 3 bets, so we're just... I mean, it's not even an outrageously big size anyway, to be fair, but that is a bit of a size up for me. I don't squeeze massive, generally speaking. We want a raising range on this flop, and I might put this in that, to be honest. Depending on what Buddy does here. It's just interestingly time banks. Like, it makes me not want to raise because it's just so weak. So we'll go with the call instead. I'm going to start bluffing here with the 8-9. I mean, I'm not going to bluff very often, but like in terms of a hand to pick, it's not a bad one. Wasn't really expecting the barrel on the turn. I mean, with the timing, you know, taking his time off both streets, as I say, generally weaker. I think like block 67 here makes sense. As I say, with this in mind, we just go ahead and call. It's obviously not the cleanest river in the world, but we're not folding, so. You have it, you have it. Yeah. Interesting on the timing, to be fair, but as I say, it was consistent at least, but hey ho. Sometimes they gotta get there. Okay, so Sea of Magic is very, very tight. generally speaking. I don't mind going into a check here. With my hand strength, he snap checks the turn, which is just very, very, very weak. I think we're going to do like something small and then check on a lot of rivers here. Oh, Jesus Christ. Good stuff. I'm going to see bet the sixes. I actually think we have a turn barrel here quite a lot. Like, it looks razor thin, but like when you get check called on paired boards, the ranges are so overcard and ace high heavy that you just go really thin for value. Obviously a fine check as well, like, don't get me wrong. 10-9. What a river, eh? What a river for you. Hey, flop check here. I'd expect like a range check here, to be honest, from Cruiser. Yeah, with that in mind, I don't mind checking again, to be honest. Still a very strong range in these sorts of positions. The 10 is not a bad card. For him, obviously, we can check call versus any size. Not an ideal river, unfortunately. So this is one where I probably will fold quite often. Just because his range from under the gun is already quite strong. And it's a very good river for him. So he's basically in a spot where I think he needs to bluff like all of his bluffs or something like that. And a lot of that should be ace high. So I just think folding here is going to be the best play. It's quite difficult to overdo the bluffing there, I think. All right, so we get the chance to go heads up with Finland and we flop the nuts. Oh, what a flop. He checks, does he? So we know he's got like a really mergy value range here. And he loves a check raise. But with the SPR as it is, I don't really want him to just check fold king queen. So I'm gonna, just check back, and there's nothing bad that can happen here. I think I'm gonna check again. I think his range is just really weak and ace high heavy. And just weak in general. So I think checking again is nice. Let him catch up. We can obviously put the money in on the river. That's not a bad river, Where we might get a stack now just from ace jack or king jack or something. Okay. Well, when he checks 3 times, unfortunately, he doesn't have much, but we'll give him the chance to... we'll give him the chance to hero callers. As I say, important, like you slow play, onto the river, but you have to try and win a stack. Over here with the Jack 10, so this is like a good example of like, red. I know I've made the nuts again here, but like checking the turn to raise some rivers here is going to be really, really nice. Do I just jam it? No, I mean, he should have Jack 10 as well. Yeah, we did win a stack. There you go. Oh, what a plan comes together. Do we just jam? Jam's kind of outrageous, to be fair. Like 200 deep. When he can have just as much Jack 10 as I can, I think, so. So yeah, we'll talk about this in a second once this hand finishes. Okay. So obviously we covered the flop and the turn pretty well, you know, like obviously we flopped the absolute world, which is great. And we checked the flop, which, you know, as I say, I don't think is something that many people would struggle too hard with. The turn check as well, like same sort of thing. Like when he checks twice, his range is, as I say, just quite ace high heavy, quite high card heavy ultimately. And there's no bad rivers. I don't mind letting him catch up. The key here is the river, right? You have to, when you do slow play in these kind of spots, you have to then go ahead and at least attempt to win the stack. Like, look, don't get me wrong. You're going to just get folds endlessly, but you have to give him the chance to hero call in this sort of spot. If you just bet 16 bigs, right, and then he calls and shows Queen Jack, you've cost yourself a lot of money ultimately. As I say, when you could have gone ahead and done this, looks like a bluff, and you can just go ahead and win a stack. I'm gonna just call the ace king here. As I say, I'm just trying to get into different spots, different lines. And calling is fine. Like again, you know, you can call ace king here, absolutely. So on the flop, I think I'm just gonna go check call. Or do I check raise? No, I think check call's fine. This guy's never folded to a 3-bet, so we will 3-bet. I think we check rip it, to be honest. The idea, we'll get into it in a second. Let's just play this hand out. We're just going to start small here. And I'm just going to click it back. Yeah, we'll talk about this first. So, obviously, we're going to win endlessly here. But versus recreationals, like I like to like fast play in these sorts of spots and just click it because they don't fold to that anyway. It's really strong anyway. The check min raise, and now he's going to lead jam. Do we do anything else? Do we delay the inevitable here? Nah, we just want to stack a queen, basically. So no idea what he check min raises, calls a click, and then check snap folds the turn with. No clue, but do your thing. Ace queen with your 4-bet. And we'll open wider because of the big recreational here. So over here with the ace king, we check call the flop. Like turn goes check, check, very standard stuff. I think on the river, my range does contain a lot of pairs, does contain a lot of like king jack, king 10. Whereby my opponent may end up turning a hand like, probably not jacks, but like a hand like 6s, 8s, 9s into a bluff. Or value bet a worse ace. Weird spot. I guess just small here. It's going to go bet jam with the ace 9. I have a disgusting feeling this guy has aces for some reason, but that's probably just me being scared of what's under the bed. Do I jam? Nah, I think just this. This looks good to me. And then, I mean, yeah, if you have it, you have it, I guess, but it's the money's going in. Oh, that stinks of a value hand. Do you have any hands in your range that you call flop with? Call turn and then bluff the river. Nah, it's just so shit. We just lose, but okay, we don't. Kind of surprised he snapped that off, to be fair, but fair enough. So check on the flop here on Jack A8. So this one, I think I'm going to go very polar. Yeah. So I think something like 2x pot, 2x pot, like our hand is not worth 2x pot. Do I do any other size here? But I think his calling range is quite inelastic ultimately. Like, you know, you check back Jack 10, you can't, you know, because you've checked back Jack 10 or aces, you don't go ahead and fold it. So I think it's quite inelastic, to be perfectly honest with you. Had some spots, no? What a video. What hand? There was a hand I wanted to talk about. I completely forgot. Yeah, the ace queen. I mean, I guess obviously I have all the ace king. Potentially. It's an interesting thing to think about here because I don't actually, because I have 4-bet jams and I 4-bet jam ace king off, like, or call it like we did up here. So I only have ace king suited, which is a little bit different. Obviously he'll look at this and go, yeah, he has all the ace king, so yeah, I call. That's probably why he snapped, but it felt really disgusting tripling that, but you know, very happy. Very happy to get snapped by his jack there. But yeah, it's I guess relatively standard from him, but you know, I don't think it's a huge mega punt at all. But yeah, knowing me and knowing my range, I don't actually have as much ace king there as he thinks. But I mean, I do obviously have ace 10. But the issue is, as I say, I have ace king suited and I have ace 10, but you know, a lot of that's flushes. At this point, you also block the ace king of hearts and all this jazz, so I don't know. It is what it is. Do I bluff anything else? Maybe ace 5. Hard pressed to find other bluffs there though, apart from that. So yeah, I don't want to. It's not something to criticize him on, to be honest, at all. I think it's relatively standard stuff, but plus with the SBR and the river, like he's got to call 1/3, so he basically just has to call everything anyway. So it is what it is. I think it's completely fine on reflection. So we got multi-way here with the 10-8, and we're going to check. And I'm going to 3-bet the a6. That's what I wanted to talk about, the 5-3, wherever that is. There we go. So versus this kind of profile of our opponent who checks back, you know, a jack 8-8 is a board you can bet quite a lot on, to be honest. Obviously, you can go ahead and have a checking range. Probably folding my 10-8 here. Really interested to think about like what does this, to be honest, but we will go ahead and just bin it. So usually in this kind of spot, people's checking ranges, I don't want to say that they, you know, don't contain decent hands, because they do. I think, you know, you are going to get shown aces here. Obviously, he will have the occasional flush, probably not enough. He probably will have the occasional straight, but again, probably not enough. The usual kind of hands that people will check back here are going to be, as I say, aces or like Jack X or 10s and 9s, the natural stuff. So oftentimes what tends to happen here is people station those hands really hard because they understand that, well, you know, he's taking advantage of a cap range, so therefore I'm going to go ahead and call. So this is you know, when we talked about sizing up before, this is exactly the sort of spot where we'll do it. Whereby, you know, we're taking advantage of the fact that his range is capped, but we want to size up with our value as well as our bluffs. We want to try and, as I say, force the indifference. So 2x pot, 2x pot now gives him a really, really tough decision with, like, as I say, the aces or the Jack X, which I still think he defends, to be honest. I'm going to go ahead and, I was going to say, like, I would go disgustingly large on the river there. Let's go into a polarized line here and do this. But yeah, so as I say, a lot of the time with your sizings on the river versus those kind of ranges, you really need to go big to, as I say, force them into the tough spot. Like if you, I like paying attention to how quickly people call on the river. Like if I get snapped there and he shows like Jack 10, this is not the size, right? The size needs to then be bigger. Because if I've got a snap call from a bluff catcher in that kind of spot, my size, I could have gone bigger, essentially. So we need to always get the time bank. We need, you want to force indifference. So much of poker is about building strategies that force your opponent into tough spots with, the majority of their range or like buckets of their range. And yeah, if you get snap called on the river here and you get shown Jack 10 or something along those lines, then you've not done that. You've not forced any kind of indifference. So the adjustment is to then fucking scroll up and go even bigger. Queen 9, we will, we could free bet, I guess, but I'll go call. And yeah, we are just check folding. What other points did we have here? Focus on bluff catching and putting stuff into different lines. Well, I put stuff into different lines and I've done there's a nice example of sizing. Can't remember how many bluff catch spots we've had, but we'll try to get in a few more of those, so I'll be a little bit more bluff catchy on the river to try and illustrate that. I'm going to check a few more rivers to people. Probably just checking the ace 9, to be honest with you. Never folding, but it's an interesting size. Let's think about how thin he's going for half pot there. Okay, I guess we check. A little bit of indecision on the river there, wasn't there? I'm not really sure what that could mean, but we just have a very easy check anyway. Didn't bluff, wow. Maybe I was getting check raised. That would make sense. Yeah, I kind of feel like that was the vibe. He's checking the river and I'm going to get that in my face if I go ahead and bet. But yeah, we'll call the fours. Like generally I just play free bet or fold in these sorts of spots, but we're deeper. Like button versus cut off at least. We're a bit deeper, recreational here. We can go ahead and flick in the call. With a diamond, I think it's a relatively straightforward continue. Without, it's a bit moody, to be honest. Also think, again, it's a board he could be very aggressive on the turn. I'm gonna find a little check raise here. No, we're not using the RNG today, we'll just free bet. Obviously this is a frequency free bet and my habits would have just gone, okay, yeah, we'll do this, but for the video, as I say, let's get into the spots. Alright, so that's quite a good turn for my range. Have a pure air ball though. So I think we're going to go ahead and check. Like I have enough 6x and 7x and stuff like that. Like I check raise the flop like a gazillion here. Many percent. So it's not like I have to go ahead and bet my range on that turn. Although it is obviously a very, very good turn. And yeah, we are just going to check fold here. I'm not like check raise here is with this kind of hand is just a little bit shit. The plan, as I say, on the flop here is obviously to win the hand, but also like barrel a 6 and a 7. If you don't hit that in that kind of spot, shutting down and just check folding is always going to be fine. Yeah, 5-4, why not? We're here to have fun. And we're not going to fold. Big size and quite quick from my opponent is not not ideal. Probably quite a strong range. It's strong range anyway, but probably a little bit stronger than it should be. But I don't mind these like suited hands here because these kind of boards you do very well. So really the only question is going to be, do we just get it in early or something else? I think if he uses half pot, I think we probably just run it. It sucks, but we just have so much equity. Like if he just has 2 kings or something like that, we're not doing that bad. We can get it in good versus clubs, and we can fold out some ace king, which is not necessarily bad. So in it goes. Good luck. So kind of autopiloted the flop here, but I would have checked anyway. Turn over bet is not usually something you will see here, but fair enough. I don't, do your thing. Ace king gets there, I guess. Maybe I don't check back enough flushes, but interesting size to pick either way, but nothing to be done with the ace 7. Let's go ahead and fold and move on. Tempted. Very tempted to 4-bet this. Again, it's a fine 4-bet. Aggression for the video. And again, like Jack 10 is mixed between fold and call, but again, here for a good time. Probably not going to have a good time on that flop, annoyingly. So King Jack, probably call okay. 4-bet's kind of whatever. I think my 4-betting here being deeper, I would personally just kind of build it around suited ace-x, I think. Stuff that can make the nuts more often, at least. It's an interesting size to pick. Not really much I can do about it, unfortunately. That's why it's a good size. You just have to fold. So we get a quick check from our opponent on 9-7-6. Not necessarily indicative of his hand strength, but my hand is just really shit checking back, so I'm going to go ahead and go small. I mean, the ace should be ridiculously good for him, especially when you think about, like, from a human perspective, like, how often am I going to stab ace queen here and stuff like that? And he'll check call ace king and stuff, like, infinite, so... Yeah, so this is a spot I'm not going to bluff my opponent. Basically, I think his range is quite strong. I think he'll probably overcheck the flop because we're a little bit deeper. And on the river, like he just doesn't have like king queen in his range and stuff like that. And I don't think I'm folding him off like a 9-10 all that often because my range here, like if I have an 8, I barrel the turn quite a lot. So I'm basically like in never bluff mode here. I know it's a video about redlining, but I honestly don't expect that kind of hand class to fold very often. And I think it's quite easy in that kind of spot for him to play like basically all value in that line. So sometimes, as I say, it's a video about redlining, but you do need to know where to give up. That's, you can go ahead and bluff the river there, but I think it's overcalled, and I think you're sacrificing your blue line for the sake of the red line. So, decent point to make, I think. But, when we do go ahead and stab the flop, we're just barreling infinitely on the turn. It's just not the ace that we're going to go ahead and do it on. But the hell is your range here, Cruiser? I am going to fire the absolute shit out of this one, though. Do you think he has pocket pairs? A lot. I don't think there's much 10x. I mean, it's just like 2 5s and shit, so I want to put that in the blender, really. Well, we can induce. Let's find the 3 ball with the 9, should we? Getting a little bit deeper. Cool. I think the small bet gets it done here in these positions. Like, it's really difficult to float the flop with king jack of diamonds here. A lot easier when you're on the button. So I'd probably size up if I was versus the button to like 40% or something, but I think versus under the gun, it's pretty fit or fold. We generate a lot of fold equity there. In this sort of spot, to be honest, I'm surprised he shows up with this kind of hand. I don't think there's a world in which you should show up to the river with that kind of hand, if I'm being honest, but I'm sure Cruz has his reasons. He's a very, very solid and good player. I'd actually prefer to bluff like no equity shit here more than king jack. Like, I've got a lot of showdown value. I can go into bluff catch mode. I have no idea what that size is all about, but I mean, this kind of, I guess it strengthens the idea of, you know, putting these kind of hands into the check, so we're not just check folding to small. I don't know. That felt very like MDA exploitative. That I've been there. That's why it feels like that. Where it's just like, this guy range bets the flop. They overfold the turn to small, so therefore I'm going to bet small with every hand in my range. That is very much the vibe I got from that kind of hand. So, interesting note, you know, mental note to take on that kind of opponent, because I would be pretty sure that's what he's doing there, because there's just no reason. No reason that I can fathom as to why you would do that otherwise. Because it's just like, it's the world's easiest check. I just don't really understand. Or, you know, if you're going to bluff, you bluff bigger. There's not really many hands in your range that want to block there for me. Like, do you really just want to go ahead and bet pocket 5s? I guess you can, but not a massive fan of that. But as I say, I think it's very easy for people who are... Where's he from? See if I can find his screen name in a second. If he's Brazilian, then it would make sense. But the point is, as I say, people who see a lot of data... I'm going to check the lobby. What's that? Belarus. Okay. Interesting. People who see a lot of data is very, like, as I say, I've done it where I've looked at the data in this spot and go, well, you know, blind on blind, after people see bet, they overfold to a turn probe, and they do, which is why, like, you know, my reasoning for the turn check is kind of the overfold often comes from poor range construction, because people tend to just go, I've got a gutter, I'm going to go ahead and barrel, but king high is actually ridiculously strong. In that line, like, it just goes to showdown and wins a lot, so we may as well put it into that line a little bit more. But as I say, a lot of people won't do this, and therefore, like, you can just go ahead and, you know, take the immediate exploit and go, well, they overfold the turn, so I'm just going to bet my range here, which I personally don't like to do. I think it's a bit mindless. And it kind of fucks you in on the river, because your range is just, as I say, completely fucked. And then it becomes a point of, like, you have another street to play. You've just arrived here with everything. Now what? You know? Maybe this guy, as I say, plays that spot really well. I mean, he snap checked the river, so I kind of get the idea he has a bit of a vibe as to, you know, what's going on. But yeah, a very long-winded way for me to say I'm not a huge fan of that, to be perfectly honest. But it might just be, you know, we could plug it into the solver. It might be a thing anyway. Gonna check my queen again here, even though there is the recreational. Just idea being that Mr. Gold over here, if he's paying attention at least, should check all of his value to me, and then he's going to check raise me, which is a disaster. So I kind of want to avoid that spot and then get the value. At this point, it's a little bit thin, but I think with the recreational in there, we can get away with it and just do something offensive. Yeah, not folding. Because this is the thing, we can go for this sort of size and then we can induce something. I'm not going to sit here and say he never has value in this line, because I think it's quite natural still to just have value in this line. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the timing of it isn't ideal. But I don't think I'm folding, because as I say, you bet this size, it is predominantly to induce something. So we have to give him credit just for the random bullshit, I guess. Yeah. So as I say, that kind of spot, don't, you know, I know it's, again, not founded in any kind of theory there, but like, the bet small to induce, it is a thing. Like, it is a thing you can go ahead and do. As long as you always call afterwards. What's my size in here? I actually like a small size here. I think it applies a lot of pressure. And I think I can go relatively thin. Obviously not now, but... Ooh. What a spot. King good for me. In terms of that, I think if I check sets. Slow play sets here. And fast play 2-pair is my strat, I think. Sets are just less vulnerable, basically. Although I'm not entirely sure how true that is, but that's how I would tend to approach it. Like if I've got pocket queens and pocket jacks there, I'll throw in the check. Because I'm not, as I say, king is good, but it's such a connected board, you do have to be careful. So it's not like it's not like it's queen 7-4 king, where you just, everything just goes in the bet, but yeah. Right, I think we'll set out next big blind. I think that's going to cut it. 53 minutes seems nice overall. I know I blabbed on for about 5 minutes beforehand, but... Alright, GG. I think it was a pretty good one, that. Lots of fun spots. I mean, hopefully, as I say, I'm going to watch this back and see if I actually put this into action, but I think we did try to be creative and put value in and bluffs into different lines. Bluff catching maybe lacked on a little bit, but you can only bluff catch if you have bluff catchers. I had the nuts a lot in that, so yeah. Sizing, I think there was a good couple of examples of just, you know, what we can get away with and going bigger and stuff like that in certain spots. So yeah, GG. As I say, hopefully I articulated stuff well. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, whether you enjoyed it, what you'd like to see in the future, any topics you would like me to cover in these sorts of, you know, YouTube videos. I'm not going to be overly prolific with the uploads. It'll probably be like once a month, but yeah, as I say, hopefully it adds a little bit of value into your own games. So yeah, right, have fun guys, enjoy your Thursday afternoon.